Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome on ONAP takeaways summary and priorities. However, I'm not sure if we are on the moment that we can share those priorities. I will try to highlight some key points that, in my opinion, could be under the TSC interest, but it requires some further discussion at the TSC level. So ONAP takeaways, for those of you who are not familiar with this concept, so recently in ONAP, we've been asking ONAP consumers to share with us their feedback, what is good, what could be improved. And I will share with you some more details on this. In fact, it will be a little bit overlapping with what Magnus was sharing earlier today, but I will focus on some maybe other aspects of it. And those lists of items or claims could be as a basis for our backlog for the TSC and further for the prioritizing activities. So this is basically what I'd like to share with you today. So takeaways. So far we had 3 sessions, and I'd like to make a big applause for those folks who are mentioned here. So Keguang, Ram, Maggie, and Justin, who joined the TSC sessions for those particular dates. There are slides and recordings available. So if you are interested, you can easily consult what was said, what was displayed. I succeeded last night with Vishal from Spark New Zealand to get his recording. We recorded his testimony. So I think it will be good action point to put this recording for the next TSC. So maybe Sandra could make this play this recording, and we could all together listen on feedback coming from Spark. So this is very valuable for us because we first time could listen. Okay, if consumers are using ONAP components like off the shelf, or there are some modifications performed, and if all components are used, or maybe some more specific ones. So this could help us also in identifying what are the core components of ONAP, where we need to put some resources to make them, moving forward with each release, or maybe this is like, if it's not yet unmaintained, a good candidate for unmaintained. All right, so shortly speaking, so China Mobile, I need to get some extra information from Keguang on the use cases and the exhaustive list of the modules used. What was important is that, first of all, China Mobile is using L Alto release, and they made some customizations which might be interesting for us, like replacing the Janus graph with Nebula graph. And I recall that we have some issue with ANI for some upgrade of the, I think it is for the Python or for Java, that unfortunately Janus is not supporting it. And for SO, for example, they replaced the Camunda engine with Flowable. They add also node adapter, and shared 2 major requirements. One was for the container orchestration capabilities and Nephew integration, and also support for the resource pull scheduling. If we consider the presentation by Ram from Bell Canada, so they have use cases for the orchestration and automation, and shared really interesting requirements and some plans like for the DMAP moving to StreamZ and so on. I will not read it that in the details. What is important is that it was raised, and not only by Ram, that we have too much bureaucracy we don't have an agile approach, and we need to focus on improving this area. Also, the operational, let's say, the way how operationally you can manage ONAP, like for upgrades and so on, it's something that we could consider as a action point to improve. There is interface with ORAN mentioned, interface with Nefio. So yeah, I think it's repeating from several consumers. If I move to the next presentation that was delivered by Maggie and Justin. So this is the specific use case for the private 5G and security and analytics. There were some few releases implementation. I think now they are running Istanbul release, and also very pragmatic, very interesting requirements shared about the sizing guidelines, documentation on resource allocation, Kubernetes storage driver instead of hard-coded hand path, and some documentation that could be improved, and so on and so on, right? So this shows that obviously ONAP can be used in multiple ways, right, by the consumers, but when we listen to those comments, I think that we can hear some, let's say, repeatable sounds or voices, right? So I will try to summarize them in one of the next slides. So maybe it will be a little spoiler here, but this is the summary of Spark New Zealand. I think I will simply post the recording. But again, it was mentioned about Nefio and ENCO, interesting about the VRAN adoptions, that it's not only ORAN, but also VRAN is, for example, interesting for our colleagues in New Zealand. And they implemented Gilling release, plan to upgrade. They use the open source OpenShift version, and they are focusing on the VNF orchestration integration with the Ericsson and Nokia VNFs, and focus on zero-touch automation. So what could be our backlog, right? Because I need to say this is not for sure the exhaustive list. You could fulfill it with all the lines provided by our consumers. But one of the points I see is like user friendliness. So it has multiple flavors. It means that on one side, it should be easier to get on board a new employee, new person to work on it, to have maybe better documentation, maybe some trainings, and so on, right? Maybe even support coming from the community. Definitely streamlining processes to limit overhead. So this is something that Magnus initiated, and we had a session a few hours ago, right, on it. There was also, request on modularity about CCNF orchestration, the resource management, and those interfaces to ORAN or VRAN and Nefio, right? So this is let's say something that we need to still work on, and I'm sure this is something that we will make a solid list of items, and then we will try to work on priorities. And if we speak about the priorities, we had this discussion earlier today with Magnus and the team on how operational ONAP model could evolve. So I was thinking from the perspective, if we would do the changes of how ONAP operates, if we would agree that, let's say, use cases would be driving, ONAP next releases or evolution, or maybe those releases would be independent and more modularity would be implemented. So still we are short on resources, right? And we need to prioritize, right? So whatever we would choose, I feel that user friendliness and processes resources optimization could be our one of the top priorities, right? So we need to ensure that it is easier to get new users onboarded on ONAP. If it's not the case, those users will go somewhere else. They will, contribute to other projects. This is simple rule, and this is the message I wanted to share with you. And yeah, I'm open for your comments. It's very short list yet. I think these are the one of the most important non-technical, not directly technical aspects of the ONAP project that needs to be simply covered by us. Otherwise, we are getting less and less involvement, and if you don't change it, ONAP would at some point be abandoned, right? So, which would be really not a good perspective for us. Okay.
Pavel,
Yes.
One question.
Sure.
What do you mean? What do you mean by process resource optimization? I don't get that.
So here, this is like one of these bullet points is the like streamlining of the release management process. This is what we are doing right now, right? With David, with Magnus, and with PTLs during the PTLs call. And earlier today, there was also a session to continue this journey.
Okay, I see. It's
yeah.
about making the release process and so on easier. Okay, I get it. Okay.
And because one of the messages is also it came from Belcanada, for example, that having PTL involved in the ONAP is like full-time job, right? And
yes.
Probably this is problematic for the companies to offer like full-time headcounts to ONAP or to any open source project. So our goal should be to make life of the contributors as easy as possible, obviously within some agreed rules of and behaviors. But I can agree that that there is still some space for the improvement here, and we should leverage those efforts. Otherwise, it will be difficult to attract new PTLs or committers for the project. If we don't have committers and PTLs, well, those projects would simply die sooner or later, right? So we need to have some fresh blood and contributions here. So facilitating those contributions and making easier to understand how things are working to be more and more involved. This would be our goal. This is proposal. And yeah, and I'm very open for the discussion here. There may be some chat messages, so let me just take a look. Starting maybe from the yes, okay, so we started. I think these are the comments from the previous meeting. Okay, so guys, any comments? Maggie, thank you for your comments about the presentation. In fact, without your input, I could not make it. So yeah, thanks to you.
Yeah, we would like to make the implementation of ONAP, let's say, measurable, repeatable, make it easier, as you said. And I know we talked about some of the unmaintained projects, and do you think that'll kind of feed into this and help create some priorities as to the different parts of ONAP that are being used the most, and maybe having us focus on, the parts that are being used the most
Yeah.
by
Yeah,
the
yeah.
community. To kind of focus in on that and continue to support those pieces of ONAP.
Yes, and here I really count on the consumers that are using actively those components to contribute. And I understand this barrier that if somebody would be fully occupied with committer or PTL job, would not do the internal responsibilities, which would not be accepted by the company, right? So that's why I think this is so important to make this contribution with really less amount of overhead, and to make technical guys, technical experts to focus on their area, right? And maybe take this burden, some project management or Jira management, or some other stuff, to take it to the minimum, so they could really focus on the technical expertise, right? Maybe
Right.
maybe the idea proposed earlier today with having use cases like
Mhm.
higher responsibility in this area could be one of the solutions. And then taking all the project management stuff and so on. But I don't know for the capacities. So I think we need to have a discussion with the use case owners. What are their capacities, capabilities? What if they could do it or not? I was thinking about the situation. Okay, what happens if we have, like, in the next, I don't know, Montreal release, we have no new use case, right? And nobody is asking to continue for the previous use case. So what will be the content of the Montreal release, right? Or another, maybe another extreme example is that I have 10 new use cases, right? And those use case owners are coming and asking the PTLs to work on something. So then again, PTLs are short in resources. So some use cases need to be supported, and they should deliver resources to do the job, right? To code, to integrate, to work on the different things. So this is something definitely we need to still discuss with the TSC. It's good to be aware of this problematic. It's good we have some new ideas on the table. And now we need to evaluate the risks behind, right? And if it can bring the success to ONAP. But definitely we need to have more contributions, right? And we need to focus on how to animate them, how to foster them, and ensure that it's relatively easy to contribute to ONAP, right? And to start using ONAP.
So Paul, one thing we discussed on the last DTF was how do we get visibility to what's being used, right? So you have given 4 examples of some user feedback, but I'm sure that's a subset, right? So
Sure,
we have other
sure.
companies, and I definitely know Orange provided us a demo last year in Egypt, how they were deploying the edge devices, right? So there are probably a lot more use cases out there that we're not aware. So that brings it fundamental questions, right? How do you define what are the new features that ONAP as a community need to undertake? Because there is a disconnect between what the most majority of our audience wants. So either we could, figure out, are we doing the right thing? Can we do a assessment of the feature and capability that ONAP offers? Are there other competing open source or vendor provided solutions out there, right? Somewhere we need to prioritize what are the features. If we can't focus on the topmost or top used or top demanded features, then we might not have this resource optimization.
True. I agree with you on that side. Yeah, definitely.
Pavel,
yes. Maybe.
yeah, I was just going to say one thing that I noticed in the user stories that I thought was interesting was a contrast between the updates implemented by the update ease of updates that was talked about by Bell Canada and China Mobile, who both indicated, that they had a difficult time with that. And then Maggie and her team at NSA, who I think Maggie, remind me, but I think they've rolled out every version, every release version of ONAP since like Honolulu, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I kind of wonder, like, why, is it just a difference between a telco environment and a non-telco environment? Or I wonder why. I don't think Maggie said that it was easy, but it was doable. So why could she take this on, but it was a barrier for Bell Canada and China Mobile? I wonder about that.
I have a comment here because, I don't know. My guess is that Maggie is working on it, but it's not yet commercial deployment, right? And upgrade means you need to build a completely new ONAP. It's not like you transition from the existing to the next, but it's like building completely new one, right, Maggie?
Right. That's correct. We have these running in parallel, basically.
Yeah.
That's how we're doing it. And I think that's probably the reason why we need so many, the hardware resources as well, because we're running those in parallel.
That's why, Maggie, you highlighted the sizing guidelines, right? You need to know, and some requests for optimization for the Kubernetes, using the storage in Kubernetes, because of, this could help probably in building new instance of ONAP next to the existing one, right? But if you have some commercial deployment, my understanding is that it's not that easy to migrate the databases, all the current services you have, to then reinstantiate it on the new version, right? And that's why those consumers are still using some older versions because of this complexity of upgrade. However, all of them, I think, are planning to use some newer versions, which is good because they see some benefits of using it. But the complexity could be a blocker, or at least let's say some drawback that they foresee in front of their activity to upgrade.
I can comment, David. This is Shankar. It all really comes down to dependencies. So I've seen projects where a particular release is implemented, and then you have to make adjustments, adapt to it, make it work with other systems. And once it's in place, there's a significant amount of effort to make sure and test all that with a newer version. And there's always this value judgment assessment about what do you get with a new release. And same thing with, make a simple analogy of if there's a new version of Windows that comes out, do you immediately need to update or not? Or remember, maybe I should take Ubuntu releases that are used. People don't always jump on the latest version because they have to make sure everything is stable and robust. And then, I think that's the main answer.
So I think towards that end, if it was as simple as ONAP in a box, right? A binary that you start with basic requirements and install.sh, and you get yourself a sandbox install of ONAP. I think some of these things, our consumers are pretty smart, right? They can turn up some capability and just keep what they need or do their own experimentation. But you're not getting a lot of those new consumers or academic research environment involved because it is complex. So maybe something simplified version that gives you everything that ONAP has to offer in one install,
Mhm.
and let people move from zero knowledge to at least 2 or 3 steps above it, where they can understand what it is, and then maybe the contribution will increase once people have it in their labs and they're playing with it, because it's beyond 5G, right? It is more of a enterprise and telco automation play, but we're not getting a lot of those consumer interested in it. Maybe the barrier to entry needs to be reduced.
Exactly.
I
So
think that you just volunteered to be a PTL of a new project called ONAP in a Box, Mudasar.
Well, we're trying to do something similar in Super Blueprint, where I think the meeting of mind is already there, that we want to get to the level where a solution becomes like lab in a box that people can take. But we're not there yet. But I think that is one way to improve adaptability of some of the open source software, is just make it simple and easy. 2 months ago, ChatGPT came on, you log in, you start playing with it, you realize its potential. I think you move from zero knowledge to a step above. I think with open source, a lot of these softwares, it's really the hurdle of moving from zero knowledge to some knowledge. And if we can do anything towards it, then there's a chances of adaptability.
yeah.
I'm seeing maybe a competing issue between having modularity on one side and still having ONAP as a complete set, because here, for instance, we are all talking about installing ONAP, but not talking about installing pieces of ONAP. So, which means that we still need to keep some kind of a basic framework, at least for ONAP, in order to make it work. Because if you want to upgrade ONAP, I don't think we'll be able to upgrade it piece by piece. You need to do an upgrade that take the whole framework into consideration.
Yes.
That's my feeling.
We need to have this kind of hello world or hello ONAP kind of setup, right? We call it MVP in the past. What should be MVP of ONAP, right? And then to say, okay, this is something that should allow for the user to get familiar, and then start building some simple use case like hello ONAP, hello world, and then see some automation, and then, okay, try to use the real use case to solve real problem, right? Because in the end, ONAP is to solve problems, right? In automation and policy, and multiple problems that can be solved by ONAP, but requires some involvement, and it's not like one person that can do it. It's more teamwork. All right, guys.
So,
I'm afraid
good.
We need
Yeah,
to
good
stop.
conversation. We're
I
out of
stopped the
time,
recording, Kenny,
and
right?
the town hall is actually on a different bridge.
So sorry, I stopped the recording.